The night David Bowie almost united Paul McCartney and John Lennon in a legendary supergroup. When the Beatles broke up in 1970, it felt like a wound that would never heal. Fans were left devastated, knowing they would likely never see John Lennon, Paul McCartney, George Harrison, and Ringo Starr share a stage again. The split was messy, and the friendship between Lennon and McCartney, once inseparable partners in songwriting, had turned into a public feud filled with biting comments and competitive records. The dream of a Beatles reunion was, for most, completely dead. But then came a night in 1974 that almost rewrote the history of rock music. It wasn't a planned business meeting or a record label stunt. It was a spontaneous, late-night encounter that could have led to the creation of the most iconic supergroup the world had ever seen. Not only were Lennon and McCartney involved, but so was the chameleon of rock himself, David Bowie. Bowie was in a Manhattan hotel, working on his own project, when he heard a knock at the door. Opening it, he was stunned to see the two most famous members of the Beatles, the very pair whose bitter split had dominated headlines, standing there together, smiling. Bowie had idolized Lennon for years, calling him one of the major influences on my music life, and the very best of what could be done with rock and roll and ideas. Now, both of his heroes were standing in front of him, apparently on friendly terms again. According to Bowie, his first reaction was disbelief. He blurted out something like, "I thought you two were done for good." Lennon smirked and replied with a line that would give any Beatles fan goosebumps. "Not anymore. Things are about to change." What followed was a long, intoxicating night of conversation, laughter, and wild possibilities. The trio began tossing around an outrageous idea, forming a band together. The name they jokingly floated? Something along the lines of David Bowie and the Beatles, or the acronym DBB. The concept was simple yet earth-shattering. Two Beatles and David Bowie creating new music together. Imagine the sound: Lennon's sharp wit and raw edge, McCartney's melodic genius, and Bowie's fearless experimentation all fused into one project. It could have been a reinvention of rock, a cultural earthquake that dominated music for decades. But like many legendary rock and roll stories, the dream burned brightly and briefly. By the time the sun came up, the energy had faded. Nobody took the next step, and the topic was never mentioned again. As Bowie later put it, it just never came to anything. The world had lost one of the biggest what-ifs in music history. Still, the night proved something important. Lennon and McCartney's icy relationship had thawed. In later interviews, Lennon admitted he'd even considered making a surprise appearance with McCartney on Saturday Night Live in the mid-70s, just to shock the audience. He decided against it, but the fact that it was even an option spoke volumes. All three men continued to dominate music in their own ways. Lennon, fresh from his solo triumph with Imagine, was exploring new sounds. Bowie was pushing boundaries with his avant-garde approach to rock and forming groundbreaking collaborations. McCartney was leading his band Wings to commercial success, proving he could thrive outside the Beatles. Although the DBB supergroup never materialized, Lennon and Bowie did give the world one unforgettable gift: the song Fame. Written in 1975 with Bowie's guitarist Carlos Alomar, it became Bowie's first U.S. no. One hit and one of the most enduring tracks of his career. Lennon provided backup vocals and guitar, cementing a creative bond that might never have happened. Without that fateful night in New York, fans may never know what Bowie, Lennon, and McCartney together would have sounded like. That mystery has become part of rock folklore, a tantalizing what could have been that still sparks debates to this day. Somewhere in an alternate timeline, DBB is the biggest band on the planet. In ours, it's a beautiful bittersweet. story. Proof that even the most impossible reunions can come within a single night's reach.